Good morning, folks, and welcome to another of our daily devotions. We are moving on this morning to the second Psalm, Psalm number 2. And Psalm 2 is very much like Psalm 1 in that it is introductory to the whole of the Psalter. It occupies a very significant place in the layout of the Psalter. Psalm 1 shows us two groups of people in the world. There are the righteous and there are the wicked. Psalm 2 shows us two views of the world. There is the view of rebellious man in his sinful state, and then there is God's view. You first of all get what man wants to do and tries to do, and then you get what God is actually doing. Let's think about this psalm. The first three verses are our focus this morning. And they set before us a world that is in rebellion against God. Listen to what we read. Why do the nations rage and the peoples plot in vain? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, Let us burst their bonds apart and cast away their cords from us. What we have here is the hatred of the world towards God and towards his anointed, that is, his Messiah, namely Jesus. The world is a fallen, rebellious, sinful world of human beings. There are people who make it very, very clear that they have no time for the God of the Bible. No time for Jesus, no intention of allowing God or Jesus to rule their lives, and they will not accept God. There are others who are maybe not as obvious in their antagonism towards God. It's not clear and on the surface, it's hidden, but their attitude, nevertheless, is very much the same. They will not want to have anything to do with God and with Christ. Their attitude is similar to that which existed when Jesus was first here on earth. People said, We will not have this man to rule over us. And that is true today. It's the same attitude. It's the attitude of Psalm 2. Basically, they do not want to have God's authority in their lives. It's true of the individual, it's true of society in general, and it's true also of governments and of nations. That's why they crucified Jesus 2,000 years ago, and if Jesus were alive today, they would kill him once again. And because the world is in rebellion against God and against Christ, they are also in rebellion against and they hate God's people. That's why Christians suffer so much and experience so much hatred and persecution in the world. The world hates Jesus, it hates the God of the Bible, and it hates Christians as well. That's the world that we live in. Do you know that there were more Christians persecuted in the 20th century for their Christian faith than in all the other centuries added together? Jesus says, If the world hates you, know that it hated me first. If you were of the world would love its own. But you are not of the world, but I have chose you out of the world. Therefore, the world hates you. The world wants to cast off God's laws, God's authority. Let us break their bands apart, they say. Let us cast away their cords from us. They see God's law, God's rule, God's standards as something that ensnares them, something that enslaves them. It keeps them from living as they want. It ties them to a way of life that they have no desire for. They hate it. What they want is self-autonomy, to decide for themselves what's right and what's wrong, to decide for themselves how they will live. They literally want to be free to live a godless life, a life without God. That's what the first three verses of Psalm 2 are saying. We don't want God, we will cast him off. They will determine how things will go for them, for their society, for their nation, for the world. This second psalm begins by saying to us, listen, have a proper view of the world you're living in. It's a world that is in rebellion against God. Don't be surprised by that. It's a world that hates God. It's a world that hates his Messiah, Jesus. And it's a world that hates his people. And brethren, that's the world that we are going out into today. And we need to take care. But we also need to take heart, because as you notice, this psalm doesn't have just 3 verses. It doesn't end at verse 3. And as we'll see in our next study, there's another view of the world that is much, much more encouraging for us as the people of God. So take heart, but also take care. Every blessing.